We are 5 lines from the bottom. V'lochem b'Rosh Hashana. That's what we're up to. I want to give a little bit additional insight into this concept that we say that to create yesh meyayin, a true yesh meyayin, where it's a yesh that does not recognize at all any yayin, it's a yesh all on its own. It's possible only it's entirely within the ability of atzmus only. Because mitziyusa mi'atzmusay. In order to create this type of yesh meyayin, the creator has to be totally concealed. Because as long as the creator is recognized, is there, it's not yesh meyayin. You see where the yesh is coming from. And as long as you see where the yesh is coming from, then the yesh is also not a full-fledged yesh, like we explained before. Yesh netzah, because it reflects something that precedes itself. It's not a real yesh. In order to conceal oneself in such an extreme level, it has to be atzmus, that mitziyusa me'atzmus. Why is that? How is that related? Let's take a very, very simple, mundane illustration of the concept of concealment. When you speak, you can speak loudly, and you can speak softly, and you can whisper. But you cannot speak if it's totally inaudible. If it's totally inaudible, then it's not called speech. Then there is no speech. Why? Because speech consists of something. And if you remove that something, there is no speech. Because it has a parameters. It has a certain description, certain limits of what it is. Thought is totally inaudible, outside of the thought, to outsiders. So therefore, thought does not exist in the world of speech. So thought, relative to speech, is like ayin, because it doesn't exist in the world of speech. When we say that speech comes from thought, there is this separation. Speech comes from thought, but it is only the content of speech that comes from the thought. The power of speech itself doesn't exist in thought, because thought is totally inaudible. So, in this respect, we could say, even though, as we said, of course, speech is not yesh miyayin, but the concept that yesh miyayin can only be something that can completely conceal itself and still remain. What can conceal itself totally and still remain, still be there? So for this we say that anything that has any kind of parameters, any kind of reason for its being, cannot be completely concealed. Because if it's completely concealed, then its reason for being is lost. The reason for being of speech is what? What you should hear. If you can't hear, then the reason for being for that speech is lost, and the speech itself is lost. Anything that has any kind of parameters cannot be totally concealed. In thought, there is a very deep thought that is hardly noticed, like we discussed the other day, before, that thought, even though there's a language involved, there are formats involved, but you're totally unaware of it. Nevertheless, there are certain forms to it. A thought that has absolutely no form loses the qualifier as a thought, because it says nothing. A thought is supposed to reveal something. If it reveals nothing, then there's no thought. What is it that can be totally and completely concealed, without any revelation, without any expression whatsoever, and yet be there? Only that whose existence is not for any particular purpose. And this is what we say, that is mitzius me'atzmus. Mitzius me'atzmus can be completely concealed, and it does not affect its presence whatsoever, because his existence is not on a functional level at all. It's not for any purpose. And this is what we mean when we say that Mitzius me'atzmus is capable to create real yesh miyayin.
In other words, it's capable to make itself ayin.
To be completely concealed while creating.
So you're saying that anything that has a function, if its function is concealed, it ceases to exist.
And what does not have a function? Only atzmus. With mitzius me'atzmus. What does mitzius me'atzmus mean? It is there because it is there, not because it's needed, because something requires it, because of some kind of function, some kind of a purpose. And therefore, his mitzius is absolute, is not destructible.
So, with the idea that becoming ayin, anything can become ayin, anything can take this state of ayin, but it doesn't have the duality of these ayin and yesh,
And be present.
and be present. When only
When we are involved in a very, very deep personal insight, that thought, one can just say, it's hardly audible to myself. It's so deep and it's so fine that it's like ayin. But it's not real ayin. Because if there's no awareness, there's no thought. There has to be some kind of awareness. Because thought has, by definition, a function. What is the function of thought? Awareness. There's no awareness at all, there's no thought. Okay. Did you, by the way, review that? Discussed it? Fine. All right. Okay. So, we finish by saying that Malchus is clearly rooted in Atzmos. Because since we see that Malchus has this capability.
I don't want to interrupt, but just from what you said, does it have the implication that if you're not aware of something, it doesn't exist for you?
No, that's not implied at all. You may not be aware, but you should be aware. What do you mean? If you're not aware of something that doesn't exist for you?
You said like thought, like the idea of thought. It's like it's so audible that you can. It's so
Inaudible.
inaudible that you can barely hear it, but you can hear it because if it was at a point where you couldn't hear, then it's not thought. It's not.
Then it doesn't exist. That's not thought. Exactly.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Life itself is expressed in awareness, which is thought. Which means that thought is present at all times. And Chas v'Sholom, should there be a cessation of thought, there is a cessation of life. Because there cannot be a presence and a non-presence at the same time. Okay. So we concluded before that Rosh Hashana, that Malchus has the power to create, and thus Malchus has the power from Atzmos. Malchus is representative of Atzmos, which means that Malchus is actually rooted in Atzmos, and that's why it carries through the power of Atzmos. to create Yesh Miyai. V'lochein, for this reason, Rosh Hashana and Rosh Hashana, she'oz zman biyan hamalchus, which is the time when you have to build Malchus. Because that's what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah, very simply, means this is the time when there is a decision, Lamaila, should I continue to be a Melech or not? Which means Binyan Malchus, to build up the Spheres HaMalchus, that there should be the Binyan HaMalchus and the Binyan of continued creation. So since at Rosh Hashanah its function, its union is Malchus, that's why Nasu Moichin Lenukva Sheloire Alidei Zo. Nukva is Malchus. Zo Malchus is Zocher and Nekeva. Because Malchus is the Makabel. Malchus doesn't have anything of its own and receives everything from Zo. So normally Malchus receives everything from Zo. But when Malchus has to be built from scratch, then it skips Zo. And the Meichin, the Nukva, Meichin to Malchus comes Shaloi Alidei Zo, not through the intermediacy of Zo. Ki mebchinas habino atzma. It goes directly from Bina. I don't think we should go into this difference, in other words, why Bina yes and Zo not, but principally what we see here is here that Malchus actually connects and receives directly from Bina, which is above Zo, because Malchus is rooted higher than Zo. And this is where Rosh Hashanah is different from all other Yom Tov. The Bechol Yom Tov, who is Galus Meichin Avo Benuk. Every Yom Tov, the Inyan of Yom Tov. Why is Yom Tov different than any other day of the year? Throughout the year, the Hamshocha into the world, the Chais into the world, comes in a orderly fashion. The regular Seder, the regular order of Hishtalshalos. Moichin, Midos, which is Zo and Malchus. Yom Tov is a special time where there is a Gilui of Moichin. There's additional Gilui of Moichin. Moichin, very briefly, which we have already discussed at various occasions, Moichin is in a category by itself, way above Midas. Does that strike anything? I mean, do you remember the discussions about Moichin and Midas at all?
Yeah. When did we discuss it?
Well, first of all, we discussed it in the general class. I explained in you from Moichin of Seichel.
Remember, we're talking about from the shoulder higher, he's higher than the nations.
Right.
That his midas are higher
Then there are other people's of Moichin.
Yeah. Being awareness of Hashem is
Yeah. Yeah, let me give, even though this is brought as from the side, but everything is from the side. We'll try to understand as much as we can. Moichin and Midos. I recall clearly discussing this question that we say that Moichin is the Ikir of the person, where in fact Midos is what he feels the highest. Why do we say that Moichin have more highest hanefesh than Midos? So Briefly, it's like this. Coming back to the illustration that we used many, many times to illustrate Seichel versus Midas. That when you participate, let's say, in a simcha of a friend, there's a simcha, there is food, there is singing, there is dancing, there is something that touches you and arouses your excitement. That's simply from the activities that are going on. There is special food, there is special setting, special singing that arouses your excitement. But this arousal comes directly from a certain activity, not from the reason for this activity, but from the activity itself. Moichin do not relate to that at all. Moichin says, what is this about? What's going on? What do you mean what's going on? We're eating and drinking and we're singing. No, that's not what's going on. That's insignificant. That doesn't do with Moichin. What's meant that not do with Moichin? It doesn't do with reality. There's no reality to it. There's no real meaning, basis for it. You're doing things. But what's really going on? That's what Moichin is about. So, when you tell somebody we're eating and drinking, you've said nothing. When you say, we're celebrating somebody's l'chaim, then you said something. Something really is happening. Even though this celebration is expressed through some kind of midas aspect, right? Of singing and dancing and whatever. But that's already secondary to the real thing. So that this simple illustration gives us an understanding what Moichin is. Moichin recognize only a certain level of reality, a certain level of real value. Below that, it doesn't touch it. Normally, as we learned before, what entices a person to speech? Let's say, midas. Has to go through midas. Get excited. You get a midas from the Hevel Halev, which we learned. Speech, this is malchus. What entices a person to speech? Some kind of a direct excitement that comes from midas, not moichin. Surely there has to be moichin behind it, but that's not what trickles down to speech, to malchus. Okay. On Yom Tov, there is a higher revelation. Yom Tov, there is a higher revelation of godliness, which means you recognize not just the pleasantness and the midas aspect, the goodness, but the truth aspect on Yom Tov. And this is the name of Yom Tov. At Yom Tov there is Gilui HaMeichin, Hamshochas HaMeichin in Malchus. And that's why the whole world on Yom Tov is a notch higher, a notch holier, superior than it is in other times, because it has a revelation, has a sense of what it really stands for. What is the godly purpose of it? Where is the godliness in it, in the world? Normally you see world as such. Yom Tov, there's a different sense. Even when you go to eat a Sudas Yom Tov, it's a different type of a Suda than any other time. The food is like secondary to the fact that it's a Sudas Yom Tov. Not by everyone, is that what you're saying? This is Yom Tov. So the Rebbe says like this. Every Yom Tov, there is Hamshachas Meichin into Malchus. In the world. Malchus means into the world. Through Malchus into the world. Except that every Yom Tov, even though there is Hamshachas HaMeichin, but then still the Meichin is Nimshach through Zoh. Not like normally, Meichin is completely concealed from the world. And it is only Zoh that comes, Midas that comes into the world.
How it would relate to the example you would give about the simcha or something? How would you call it? I mean,
Well, it's very simple, like you said, right? You can confuse whether the food is the Iker or the Yom Tov is the Iker. Now it's still celebrated through Midas. The Meichin comes through Midas.
in the regular day setting, you are not able to understand that the food that you're eating is for godly purpose.
No, through Avodah you could, but there isn't that Gilui. Your own purpose, you could, that's Avodah. But the Gilui on the day, there isn't the Gilui of Meichin, there's a Gilui of Midas.
But in Yom Tov,
On Yom Tov there's a Gilui of
through
Meichin.
the food.
But only through Zoh. And the example of it, you say, if one, it is because Yom Tov is to celebrate through food. Clearly, we have to understand that all of these illustrations that I'm giving are only to illustrate the point, because really it means a much broader thing that the whole world actually is elevated a notch. So every Yom Tov is galus moichin avo b'nukva. Elo sheheim alidei zoh. Except every Yom Tov, this galus hamoichin in nukva is through zoh.
What about not a Yom Tov? There's no Moichin. We're talking about.
But not a Yom Tov moichin are generally not nimshach into the world.
But doesn't it always start from Moichin and then go through Zoh?
Yeah.
Everything just starts from Zoh.
Of course, everything starts from moichin.
So what does it mean? It's not Nimshach into the world.
It's not nimshach in the world means that the moichin as such, the moichin are concealed and contained and translated in Zoh, and from that comes the nukva, the malchus. There isn't a direct sense. There are different kinds of midas. There are midas where you sense that there is midas with seichel, and there's midas that are plain midas, even though seichel may have created it. Everything starts from Meichin. But Meichin is removed in order to give room for the Midas. That's normally. That's why it says Sheishes Yomim Osa Hashem, Osa Havai. Sheishes Yomim means refers to the six Midas. Because Meichin are not Nimshach into the world. Even though Meichin creates the Midas. But Meichin gets concealed, and what is revealed only the Midas aspect of the Meichin. On Rosh Hashana, on Yom Tov, there is Hamshacha of Meichin through Zoh into the world also. There's a sense of Meichin. On Rosh Hashana, Nimshachim, or by Rosh Hashana, Nimshachim, Giloi HaMeichin, Sheloi Alidei Zoh. Rosh Hashana is different than all other Yom Tov.
How is it an example? What do you mean?
It means And if in the example, it means when the relationship, when the command, the talk, the speech, doesn't go through midas at all.
No, but it's not an example.
I'm sorry?
No, but it's something practical. Can you give another example for that? Like about the party or something, so you should sound.
Well,
really, because I just don't understand. I mean.
Well, I'll tell you. We spoke about this in terms of a party. In a party, a simcha of a child, of a chosen kala, for instance, there are different participants. I think I once discussed this, right? And it goes from the uninvited guest who just came in for a meal, all the way down to the parents of the bride and groom, and all in between, and they all experience this simcha very, very differently. And the father of the groom, especially the father of the bride, holding the groom of the chosel, is in a totally different world. To him, this is a pure simcha. He dances, he even eats, but he's totally unaware of this. It has a totally different meaning. It has the meaning of what the Moichin defined it as. It's not an experiential simcha. At least this is what's possible. Not everyone experiences that, but that's in essence, this is what should be. This is what there is, what potential there is. Because he's zeicha to marry off a son. It's creating a new world. It's the ultimate of one's life's accomplishments. And for various reasons, accomplishment and the love that he has for his son and all that, it elevates him completely in a different world. By the Hashana, by the Rebbe's Hashana, unser Rebbe's Hashana. So the Friedrich Rebbe took a waiter's kerchief, threw it over his arm, and took a bottle of mashke and cups and went around the tables serving l'chaim to the guests, the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, the Chosen, the Rebbe, saw the Rebbe get up, so he also got up. So the father-in-law, the Friedrich Rebbe, said to him, "You sit." And he couldn't sit, so he still stood up. So the Rebbe gave him such a sharp look. "It's not you. You don't belong there." You sit. So then the Rebbe says, "Then I knew I better sit there." So now to explain this, why Rosh Hashana is different than all other Yom Tovim. And Rosh Hashana, the Binyan HaMalchus, is directly from Moichin, not Ruzo. But this is Lefi Sheshoresh HaMalchus, Hulamaylo Mizo. Because in fact, Malchus is in essence rooted higher than Zoh. It's a higher quality.
I don't know the Rosh Hashanah. Aleph, Vav, Aleph?
Abba Ve'ema. That's Chochmah Bina. That's Moichin in general. Okay? Lefi Sheshoresh HaMalchus, Hulamaylo Mizo. because that the root of Malchus is higher than so. What does root of Malchus mean? That the essence of Malchus. There is a difference between normal time of Malchus and the time what's called Binyan HaMalchus. Binyan HaMalchus means you're first creating Malchus. To create Malchus, you have to draw it from its source. You have to recognize what its source is. Malchus cannot be created by Zoh, because it's higher than Zoh. There cannot be Malchus created because of some kind of an emotional excitement. I'm putting it into simple terms. Like we said before, that the Melech essentially is above the whole fray. He's totally disinterested in getting down. And by creating a big excitement and a big feast doesn't entice him to become Melech. There has to be something much greater, much deeper, much more essential, touching the essence of the Melech. And that's why he has to come through Seichel.
No, but you said that Malchus is in essence.
Right, but Seichel will see it again. Seichel connects to the essence. He can reveal it. We'll see that. So that's what it says. Shoyrosh HaMalchus L'mayla Mizah. Lochein, that's why B'binyan HaMalchus, when it comes to building the Malchus, in other words, you have to actually create the Malchus, draw it from its source. Avo be'atzmon bonolo. Your question is going to be clarified as we go. Avo be'atzmon bonolo. Abba ve'emas means chochmo bina. Seichel itself builds directly the Malchus. In simple terms, again, to translate it in simple terms, if the Melech accepts to be a Melech, it is not because he got emotionally excited, but because he saw the reality, the truth, that he should be Melech. שנמשוך in המכין. By the moichin הנמשוך, shehem atzma, I think the shin, I don't know how to fit the shin. I think it's the shin is some kind of an actually is an error. At least at the moment, I don't see how that fits in. Heim atzma, the moichin themselves. Shelo yalidei zo. Not through zo. Now, the question is, Moichin, when we say Malchus, Bemis and Malchus is also higher than Moichin, right? Malchus is rooted in Atzmus. So how Moichin able to build Malchus? V'yodua. But it's also known the Hamshoch as HaMoichin, that the Hamshoch of Moichin, who sheloi min HaMoichin atzmon. Moichin are not drawn from Moichin themselves, ki im me'oir ein soiv shalamaylo me'hamoichin. Moichin are drawn from Ein Sof that's higher than Moichin, that's above Moichin. Ukmei shekosu beitz chayim shar Moichin the tzelem perik beis. Vayma shekosu belikotera ba'abir du v'nigrashti. All right. So the Moichin are nimshach Moichin nimshach directly in Malchus. V'hainu, which means the shoyresh ha'amshocha hi, that the shoyresh, the root of this amshocha of Moichin, is me'ein sof atzmus u'mahus, is actually from Ein Sof, sheshom mushreshes b'chinas ha'malchus kanal, the very same root where Malchus itself is rooted. And this is where Moichin comes from, and this is how Moichin build Malchus.
Is it where Moichin comes from, or in Sof Atzmus?
This is where Moichin comes from, and what's the Hamshocha of Moichin is from there. This, even though, let me finish the explanation here. In our discussion, when we said that Atzilus, Chochma, is Me'ayin Timotzei, it's a Yesh Netzal. And we explained what does it mean, a Yesh Netzal. That even though it's a Yesh, but it is always connected to the source. It's not a Metzias unto itself. The yin of Moichin are Nimshach Natzmus. Moichin per se, okay, let's understand the different terminology and understand what we mean here. When we say that Malchus is Mushrosh in Atzmus, it means that the whole concept that there should be such thing as Malchus is rooted in Malchus. I'm sorry? In Atzmus. The union of Moichin, that there should be such thing as Moichin, is not rooted in Atzmus. Moichin is a gil, it's an expression. But what does it express? It expresses that which is higher than Moichin. That's why Moichin is able to be mamshich into Malchus. Malchus is the real thing. That's actually mushish in Atzmus. But Moichin can be the intermediary through which the Hamshocha comes. The mashal for this, of this intermediacy concept, is a very simple. That a shliach, we say, goes out with the power of the Shmishaleach, with the koyach from Rebbe. But he is not the Rebbe. But because he's a shliach, he can carry the message from the Rebbe to wherever he goes. And when a person receives it, he receives the message to the shliach, but the power of the message is as if the Rebbe himself delivered it. It comes from the Rebbe. Even though the shliach himself doesn't. Sometimes actually the Rebbe gave people shlichus that you should do something, say something, bring something, and they didn't even know what they were doing. But the effect of it was as if the Rebbe himself delivered it. But the Rebbe cannot deliver this. He has to come through the intermediacy of the shliach. And because of the beating, because of the connection, the shliach to the Rebbe, he is able to carry the message. This is what Moichin are. Moichin are able to carry the message of Atzmus, even though they themselves are not Atzmus. Moichin have the insight, recognition of the truth at the highest level. But that's only an insight. It's not that they themselves are that. And this is why they can carry the message all the way down to Malchus. When it comes to Malchus, it's recognized fully as what it is. This is why Mishra said that a melech, with all his moichin and all his seichel and all his insights, when he becomes a melech, that's when when his full true greatness is first recognized. Comes to expression, is recognized and shown. Because at that time, the greatness of his essence is actually recognized not through some kind of a message of moichin, but through the essence itself. It's translated in Malchus. So this is the pshat that moichin, Midas do not have that capacity. Midas are a mitzias, a creation. But moichin are connected to the essence, like we said before. And that's why moichin can carry the message, the inyan of Atzmus Ein Sof, all the way down to Malchus. And Malchus is a ready recipient of it because Malchus is actually rooted in there. I can relate to it. Okay?
Can I ask you a question?
Just want to finish one line here, this line. Meinen, the Shevish Am Shofam in Sof, the Atzmus in Sof, Atzmus Umhus, Sheshom Mushreshes, Bechinas Amalchus Kanal, Venimshach Bemalchus, and this Atzmus, this Koyach Atzmus, is Nimshach in Malchus, Litzoyrach Binyono, or Moichin is Nimshach in Malchus, Litzoyrach Binyono, for the sake of building it, Mitzad Shorsha, because of its shoyresh, Malchus is a recipient, can be a recipient of that, of those moichin. Shaloi alidei zo, not through the process of zo. Yeah.
You said that the Malchus is the representative of is Moshe the Asaf, right? And represent Hashem himself, basically, right? Who he is, and that's what we are made by, basically. That's what we are in contact with.
Not in contact with.
I understand. It's a yesh me'yan.
Yeah.
No, but still, does it mean then that?
This is how we relate to Hashem, through Malchus.
Right.
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech
Right.
haolam.
So does it mean then that although we can't we don't have on a practical level a comprehension of what whose Atmos is, what he is.
No way.
Right. So, because Malchus does not carry this message. But however we can.
No, not because Malchus does not care, because we don't see Malchus. Malchus creates yesh me'ayin.
Okay, but anyway, whatever the Malchus itself does not stand for any particular quality. It does not relate any message about what the God like, and it just reflects the message of His presence. Basically, that's what the Malchus does, right? I mean, what is this? It's reflected, like we explained before. What the Melech is, what you Melech. Melech is what he is.
Whatever he is.
Right, exactly. But for sure he is. I'm saying the fact of the presence of God, we can relate to. I'm saying
Only through the aspect of Malchus.
all right, fine, but
What is Malchus? How does Malchus express itself?
through presence,
No, through command,
command.
not through presence.
Through command.
Yes. Bidvar Melech Shilton.
Right.
The Melech rules with his words. doesn't rule with his presence.
So we can't relate to the presence of God either.
Like we explained yesterday, or the day before, that a melech is concealed in his palace. Sorry?
Tough luck, I'm saying. It's really bad situation.
Bad situation?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even. So what is this story? I don't know, if you speak too much, you tell me, I will drop it. You explained in Philip about how's it called? I forgot the portion. The person knows inside of his heart the truth. Right?
The truth, yeah.
Right. So what does that mean? That he can relate to the
No. He knows that the truth is not a created being. He cannot surmise what it is.
No, right.
But he knows that it is not anything that he knows, that he can define, that he can associate with.
Okay, but the fact that there is such a thing, he relates to.
No. See, when you say the word is,
Are you defining it?
you're already defining it as an entity.
Okay.
The minute you say he is, you say, where is he?
No, but that's not the message.
I'm sorry?
That's not the message of the Malchus. Where is he? I mean, the presence.
No, I'm saying, the minute you say he is, that begs the question, where is he? And Malchus doesn't have that question. You know the famous story of someone that asked a Persian Rebbe and says, where is Hashem? Where is God? So he said to him, where is he not? Where he is, I can't tell you. But you show me where he is not. The concept of God is not something that you can point to. Because that's the real mitzvah, the real truth. But it's completely concealed. Concealed in terms of us knowing and seeing in our context, being able to define him. There's no way. But that our context is finite, is ends, and something else takes over, that we can readily see. This is what we know truly deep down in our heart. That our context is not the real thing. Ends at some point.
But anyway, is this what you just said? Is it connected to the concept of the Malchus is?
And as a result of that, he is mekabel oil malchus shamayim. He recognizes that there is a melech. That itself is not malchus. That itself tells him that I'm a non-entity. And that's what we said, I explained, Dever Emes Bilbove, he speaks truth. He speaks truth, he speaks the truth as he recognizes. What truth? He cannot define the truth. But the truth, the truth that he does recognize, that he is not the truth. And that there is a truth beyond it. That truth is beyond his existence. Let me explain to you. There are two distinct tenuas, it's called, two distinct inclinations movements in the mind. The first is to recognize, like we said, that Metzius of the world is not the end of Metzius. It's not the real thing. And by extension of that, there is a real thing beyond the Metzius of the world. But then there's another step. The other step is, okay, so I'm not the truth, right? So I'm not the truth. Who cares for the truth? I am what I am. What compels me to relate to the truth? What I am, if I'm not truth, okay, so that's what I am. And this is where the real Dever Emes Bilvovi. This is what his heart is telling him, no. You do want of the truth. You want to relate to the truth. You don't want to live in a false, in a meaningless, in a false presumption, a false existence. You absolutely do want to relate to the truth. And that's when Kabbalah Sale comes in. You recognize that you're relating to the truth can only is through this relating to it, accepting the directives that and the path of life that is defined to you by the Medrash. So the Iver Emes Bilvavi is not just to recognize the shortcomings of the human being. The Emes Bilvavi is to recognize that the human being has tremendous richness. And what is this richness? That he does want of the truth. He does want to be oblivious of the truth. And this is what compels him, what directs him to relate to the Creator. To bring him along. And this is where the Malchus comes in. Okay? Okay, this is it, gentlemen. Yeah.